5:31 a.m. The Black Sea, 50 miles northeast of the Kerch Bridge. The BE-12 pilot has just stabilized the aircraft on one engine. The left turboprop is gone. Controls are sluggish, but the aircraft is flying. 60 miles to Kacha. He is running the math. It is possible. He almost thinks he is going to make it back. Then, the navigator sees the smoke trail rising off the water. A heat-seeking missile. He has about 4 seconds. If he can dodge it, Ukraine's attack plan will fail miserably. But if it hits, Russia loses one of its last 7 or 8 B-12s forever. This nightmare kicked off 2 hours earlier, with decoy drones screaming towards Sevastopol. Meanwhile, a patient trap was waiting below the waves. 3:14 a.m. Sevastopol. The Russian air defense operators at the Sevastopol sector command post didn't need an alarm clock. They got one anyway, in the form of 40-some radar returns popping up simultaneously to the northwest. Not a gradual buildup, all at once. A swarm. The profiles looked like FPV attack drones mixed with something larger. All of it heading toward the port and airfield complex. This is the kind of mass launch that, if left alone, puts cruise missile hangars on fire before dawn. The duty officer didn't have time to think carefully. He scrambled everything available. Su-30s off the runway at Belbek. Interceptors from Saki. Air defense batteries were brought up to active status. The whole Northwest air cover package was moving fast, in the wrong direction. Ukrainian operators were hunkered down in a dimly lit room 200 miles away. In Mykolaiv, they watched the chaos unfold on their signals intelligence screens, like kids glued to a video game. 43 Su-30 sorties were scrambled in the first 18 minutes. Every fighter that could have babysat a Black Sea control bird was suddenly racing northwest, chasing shadows. What looked like a serious raid on Sevastopol turned out to be a clever mix of cheap decoy drones and a few real FPVs. They were sprinkled in just to make the Russians fight hard. They really thought they were winning. Russian air defense crews logged 21 intercepts that morning and probably popped the champagne. They called it a victory. And yeah, it was a victory. Just not the one they expected. Because back at the Kacha Operations Center, some poor duty officer was staring at a blinking underwater contact report. Sonar arrays hugging the Kerch Bridge corridor picked it up. A UUV, possibly packing heat, creeping northeast toward the bridge approach zone. The kind of ghost that can ruin your whole day if you let it get too close. He glanced at the roster, heart sinking. No fighters left. No escort boats in range. The B-12 sat on the pad, crew strapped in.
And engaged.
Engines cold, but ready to spin up in 15 minutes flat. He had 2 choices. Delay the patrol and wait 45 agonizing minutes for the Su-30S to refuel and limp back. Or send the old bird now, alone. The Kerch Bridge feeds a third of the logistics lifeline to the Eastern Front. You don't sit on a UUV contact that close and twiddle your thumbs for 3/4 of an hour. Not when every minute counts. So, he made the call. The B-12 lifted off at 5 a.m. sharp, engines roaring into the pre-dawn dark. And in that quiet Mykolaiv ops room, the Ukrainian team let out a collective breath. Half relief, half grin. They had played the long game, folks. And the Russians had just walked right into it. 5:11 a.m. The B-12 drops to 400 feet and settles into its patrol altitude. Low enough for the MAD boom at the tail to sweep the water below for magnetic anomalies, high enough to stay out of the spray. The navigator runs his sonobuoy display. The pilot holds the aircraft steady against the chop. The mad boom gets a contact, faint, 60 to 80 feet down, moving northeast at about 4 miles out, slow and slightly erratic, like something trying to run quietly and not quite managing it. The navigator calls it immediately. The pilot banks to intercept. What the Russian crew is picking up is exactly what the Toka operators in Mykolaiv decided to give them. Not enough signal to look fake, just enough to look like a real underwater vehicle, leaking noise under stress. The B-12 rolls in. The pilot calls release, calm as ordering coffee. 4P, LAB, 250 depth charges, 550 pounds each. They tumble out in a neat, staggered line. They splash, sink fast, and then the sea erupts. 4 white geysers punch skyward like Yellowstone on steroids. Shockwaves ripple down hard. Inside Mykolaiv Ops, the screens light up red. Pressure seals groan. The starboard hydrophone array takes a beating, half dead now. The vehicle commander snaps. Kill propulsion, drop to 40 feet, silent running. The Toka's motors whine to a stop. She sinks into the dark. Up top, the sonobuoy feeds go dead quiet. The navigator stares at the screen, blinks once, twice, nothing. Submarine threat dead, mission accomplished. Or so they think. 5:20 a.m. Standard post-strike procedure. Wait. Let the noise settle. Reassess. The crew works their instruments. Navigator logging strike data. Pilot holding the orbit steady at 300 feet. Keeping the mad boom on a consistent track. The Inisha 2B nose radar is configured right now for subsurface correlation. It is looking down, not out. Nobody has eyes on the surface to the northeast, where a 26-foot hull is invisible between 9-foot wave crests, riding the sea state like a piece of drifting debris. Waiting for a signal, the Magura V5. Low-profile composite frame, no exhaust, no radar return separating from the clutter in a sea state this rough. It has been out here for 90 minutes. Patient. Inside its sealed payload bay, 4 FPV drones sit on launch rails, each connected to a fiber optic spool. No radio signal, no electromagnetic trace, and one more thing tucked into the bay that has never before been mounted on a naval surface drone. A modified short-range heat-seeking missile, 9 feet long, sitting in the dark. In Mykolaiv, the team watches the B-12's orbit lock in. Same altitude, same ground track, same timing on each loop. Methodical, professional, predictable. The Toka makes a calculated move. It rises 15 feet and lets a brief propulsion pulse bleed through the hole. One short acoustic spike, just enough to flicker on the hydrophone returns. The contact reappears on the navigator's screen. Faint, northeast, still alive. He marks it, calls it out. The pilot adjusts the orbit. The B-12 is now tracking exactly the heading Ukraine needs, at exactly the altitude, aimed exactly northeast. 3 Maguras receive their signal. A compressed 0.3 second burst on a low probability of intercept link. 4 words. B-12 established. Execute. The payload bay opens. 12 FPVs rise into the gray morning air. They level off at 30 feet above the wave crests, below the BE-12's radar horizon. Below the clutter threshold. Nearly invisible against the dark water. They orient northwest toward the aircraft's profile, coming around the eastern arc of its patrol orbit. Fiber optic spools unwind behind each one as they move. No radio signal. Nothing for Russian electronic warfare sensors to catch. Just 4 small composite shapes threading through the wave tops at 70 miles per hour, connected by threads of glass to operators sitting in front of screens 180 meters away. Now here is what Russia never put on a threat assessment. Every doctrine they have assumes FPV drones approach from behind. You're flying 180 miles per hour. A drone tops out at 75. The math doesn't work. They can't catch you. So the tail gets watched. The rear hemisphere gets the defensive attention. Nobody particularly sweats what is coming at them dead ahead at wave height. Ukraine ran the numbers differently. You don't chase a B-12. You stand in its flight path and let it come to you. Combine closing speed. Aircraft at 180, drones head on at 70. That is 250 miles per hour. At this speed, physics doesn't just suggest the outcome, it dictates it. The Ukrainian operators in Mykolaiv lean into their screens, knuckles white on the controllers. They aren't looking for a dogfight, they are looking for a collision point. But the B-12 pilot, a veteran with 3,000 hours in the cockpit, sees the first glint of sunlight off a composite hull 30 feet above the waves. His heart skips. There is no radar warning, no electronic chirp, just 12 dark shapes emerging from the sea spray clutter like a swarm of angry hornets. He hammers the throttle, trying to trade altitude for airspeed, banking the massive gull-wing airframe into a violent brake turn. The airframe groans under the G-load. This isn't a fighter jet, folks. It is a 30-ton flying boat being asked to dance like a ballerina. In the glass-enclosed nose of the B-12, the Russian navigator isn't just a crewman anymore. He is a desperate marksman trying to outrun a mathematical certainty. He hammers the spade grips of his 23mm twin-barrel cannon. Traces erupt in long, incandescent arcs, stitching the gray morning sky with threads of fire. One FPV drone, caught in a direct burst, vanishes in a puff of magnesium light. 2 seconds later, he leads another target, shredding its carbon fiber wing and sending it cartwheeling into the chop. 2 down, he screams over the intercom, but the swarm doesn't flinch. It is a target-saturated environment, folks, and the Russians know they are losing the numbers game. 7 miles to the east, the Rubin-class patrol boat Amethyst finally finds its range. Its AK-630 rotary cannon spins up with a mechanical shriek that sounds like a giant chainsaw tearing through reality. 6,000 rounds per minute of high-explosive steel create a kinetic dome around the BE-12. The sea surface between the drones and the aircraft becomes a churning graveyard of whitewater and shrapnel. Rubin's commander isn't just aiming at the air. He is hunting the motherships. He depresses the 30mm fire control, sending a stream of shells toward the 3 Magura V5s dancing in the waves. The ocean around the lead Magura erupts into 10-foot geysers. One 30mm shell clips the rear composite deck of the second USV, tearing away its communication mast in a shower of sparks. But the vessel stays trimmed, riding the swells like a ghost. This is the chaos of 2026. Russian electronic warfare units on the Crimean coast are pumping out megawatts of white noise, trying to sever the link. Every frequency is jammed. Every GPS coordinate is spooked. But the Ukrainian drones don't care. They are tethered by those razor-thin fiber optic threads spooling out from the Maguras like digital umbilical cords. It is unjammable, lag-free, and terrifyingly precise. The remaining 9 FPV drones execute a coordinated pincer maneuver. 3 of them bank hard toward the Amethyst, forcing the patrol boat to shift its AK-630 fire away from the aircraft to protect its own bridge. That is the opening the Ukrainians were waiting for. The B-12 pilot kicks the rudder side, slipping his 30-ton airframe in a violent, gut-wrenching maneuver to dodge a head-on collision. He watches as a 4th drone is pulverized by his navigator's gunfire just 30 feet from the nose. A 5th drone clips the wingtip float, spinning out of control and exploding in the wake. He thinks he is winning. He thinks the old bird has survived the gauntlet. He is wrong. While the navigator was focused on the flashy head-on threats, 2 Ukrainian operators performed a silent glide maneuver. They pitched their FPVs up into the blind spot created by the B-12's massive gull wings. One operator snaps his controller down. The FPV dives at a 70-degree angle, cutting through the turbulence of the aircraft's own slipstream. 50 milliseconds of contact. The drone impacts the Port AI-20D turboprop engine, right at the critical junction of the reduction gearbox and the fuel manifold. The collision is a violent marriage of kinetic energy and chemistry. The shaped charge doesn't just explode. It injects a jet of molten copper directly into the turbine core at Mach 4. The engine's internals, spinning at thousands of RPM, disintegrate instantly. Titanium blades shatter, turning into a cloud of supersonic shrapnel that shreds the wing's main spar and severs the primary hydraulic lines. Fire erupts with a roar that drowns out the wind. A 30-foot plume of oily black smoke trails behind the port wing. The B-12 staggers, its nose dipping toward the whitecaps. The pilot is a hero in a losing story. He is wrestling with a dead yoke, his left arm vibrating from the sheer force of the asymmetric thrust. He screams for an emergency fire suppression cycle, but the lines are gone. He manages to feather the remaining starboard engine, using every ounce of his 3,000 hours of flight time to keep the bird from a terminal stall. He is 5 miles from the Crimean coast. He can see the cliffs. He thinks if he can just hold this terrifying low-altitude glide, he can beach the craft. But the Magura V5 isn't finished. It realizes the FPVs didn't get the clean kill they wanted. The vehicle commander in Mykolaiv doesn't hesitate. He hits the escalate command. The center section of the Magura's composite deck slides back. A modified AIM-9 Sidewinder, stripped of its heavy air-launch hardware and fitted with a specialized naval booster, pivots toward the sky. The pilot of the B-12 sees a flash of white light from the water's surface. Because the Sidewinder is an infrared, heat-seeking predator, his radar warning receiver stays silent. He has no idea he is being painted by a thermal seeker that is locked onto his burning port engine like a hungry shark. The missile leaves the rail with a roar that can be heard back on the Crimean coast. It clears the water, pitches over, and accelerates to Mach 2.5 in less than 3 seconds. Inside the cockpit, the Russian pilot whispers something. A prayer. He watches the streak of white smoke bridge the gap. There is no dodging this. Not on one engine. Not in this bird. The Sidewinder impacts the tail section, right where the MAD boom meets the fuselage. The explosion isn't just a fireball. It is a structural catastrophe. The entire tail assembly, the eyes and ears of Russia's Black Sea anti-submarine effort, is sheared off by the force of the blast. The B-12, now a headless giant with a burning wing, loses all aerodynamic stability. It tumbles once, twice, before impacting the Black Sea at 200 miles per hour. A 13-ton hammer hitting an anvil of water. In the Mykolaiv ops room, the screens go black. The fiber optic threads have finally snapped. The silence that follows isn't empty. It is the sound of a paradigm shift. One of the rarest assets in the Russian inventory, a bird designed to hunt ghosts under the sea, has just been turned into a ghost itself by a boat that costs less than a luxury SUV. Folks, when the mist clears over Crimea, the fallout from this 90-minute skirmish ripples all the way back to the Kremlin. Russia only had about 6 to 8 operational B-12s left in the entire world. In one morning, Ukraine just deleted 15 to 20% of Moscow's dedicated coastal submarine hunting fleet. You can't just order a new one on Amazon. These airframes are relics of a vanished empire. It doesn't stop there. This loss effectively paralyzes anti-submarine patrols in the Kerch corridor. To keep the remaining birds flying, Russia will have to cannibalize parts from museum pieces and rusted hulks. A desperate game of musical chairs with flight safety. It is a brutal lesson in modern warfare. The old Russian bear decided to go for a solo stroll, thinking he was the king of the coast. But Ukraine reminded him of the golden rule. Never chase ghosts under the water when you don't have friends watching your back, especially when your friends are busy chasing decoys 10 miles in the wrong direction. So, what do you think? Will Moscow double down and risk their last few birds? Or is the Black Sea about to get a lot lonelier for the Russian Navy? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into the tech changing the world. I'll see you in the next one.